the ideas of tactical plausibility and mechanical strength. I think that these are really important concepts to understand when you're trying to like evaluate like the direction that you might want to take your game and things like that. And obviously rule set is going to dictate a lot of this. Okay, this stuff like interacts and kind of, I wouldn't even call it complicated, but like you have to understand all these kind of basic concepts and how they intersect to really make sense of any of them, right? You have to understand all of them to make sense of any of them. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. What I want to talk about is what I think is probably the most consistently tactically plausible set of strategies in competitive grappling whenever we're dealing with points formats. It's really, really important that you understand that every single moment spent in a match essentially costs something, right? Every single moment in a match, you're spending things, right? Energy and opportunity largely, right? So you're getting more tired, and if that energy is not being spent towards getting things that are going to help you win, that's a waste of energy, right? And you're also losing opportunities because you have a limited amount of opportunities in a match. So therefore, you want every moment in the match to be spent maximizing the amount of energy that you're using towards your goals. So that's like efficiency, right? And you are not wasting opportunities, right? When the opportunities present themselves, you want to be able to have it be the case that the opportunities present themselves, and then you want to capitalize upon that. So in effect, what we want to be doing is we want to be driving towards the most tactically plausible strategies, which are tactical plausibility doesn't just refer to whether you can get it, right? Whether it's something you can pull off. It also refers to the plausibility in which you can potentially pull it off within a given time constraint, right? Like that's really fucking key. So I'll give you a really notable example of that. People ask me all the time, is rubber guard good? I think rubber guard's fucking good if you're dealing with a situation where you have a lot of time to work. So it's pretty easy to stall against rubber guard. But if you have like a lot of time to work with, bro, and you're in the rubber guard of a really good rubber guard player, bro, you're in fucking trouble, okay? Like that's a bad spot to be in. But the problem is that it can be easy to stall against, okay? That's a problem, right? So anyway, basically what we want to be the case is we want to have attacks that we can pull off, things that are plausible. But just beyond that, we also want them to be attacks that we can expect to reliably be able to pull off within a given time constraint, right? So it's not just can we get it in the time allocated to us, okay? So like consistently, right? Assuming we're dealing with people that are not going to give up unforced errors, right? We want to be able to proactively force errors reliably against good people. That should be the foundation of our system, like the systems that we want to construct, right? So I think in a points format, the number one thing you should be focused on doing over and above everything else is scoring points. I know it's kind of like not what some people want to hear. They want to hear like, oh, I only want the submission. The only thing I care about is the submission. Well, that's great. But if you don't get the submission, you still want to win, right? And how are you going to win? You're going to win by scoring points. So what you want to be doing as much as is possible is working towards scoring points. Not just scoring points. You can score points and also look for a submission. These things can correlate, right? So basically, in effect, what that means is I think your primary goal in any points format should be as follows. Get your opponent's hips down onto the mat. And then from there, depending upon whether he faces you with his chest or his back, you're either going to look to pass his guard. That's if his chest faces you, or you're going to look to take his back. That's obviously if his back faces you, right? That goes without saying. So if you follow this model, if you look at like most high-level guys in like really elite points competitions, this is what they're doing. Like there's obviously you're seeing other things. You'll see flying triangles, you'll see heel hooks, you'll see arm bars, you'll see those things, but those are a supplement, if you will, to this wider positional strategy. And there are a set of reasons why this is the best overall strategy. The first is that you are optimizing your energy expenditure and opportunity cost, right? You are building towards gaining points, which are going to win you the match, and you're also maximizing the opportunities you gain, because let's say I go for a heel hook and I don't get it. It sucks. It's a zero-sum game, right? I've just lost that game, and now it's rough. Whereas if I were to, let's say I take someone's back and I go for a rear naked choke and I don't get it, guys, it doesn't fucking matter. I still got like a lot of points. I'm probably going to win the fucking match, right? So Like you want to, obviously I'm not saying don't do heel hooks. I'm just saying that ultimately we want to be driving towards things that are going to maximize, okay, the use of our energy, and the opportunities presented are going to lead to like a higher rate of winning overall. I think there's a tendency among young no-gi oriented grapplers. I was very, very guilty of this. A lot of people would say I still am. Of overly prioritizing the submission. The submission matters, guys. I care about ultimately finishing submissions. But a submission is not the only thing that matters in competitive grappling, right? Because, I mean, for instance, I'll give you guys a random stat. 2017, the 66 kilogram category of ADCC in Finland, there's only one submission. Ethan Krellenson triangled Nicholas Renier. That was the only submission, you know what I mean, out of all of those matches. So it's really tough at the highest level to always reliably get submissions. But you still want to be able to win, right? That still matters. So my recommendation for developing grapplers is this, that you prioritize first and foremost an understanding of the positional game before an understanding of the submission game, which is like, this is kind of like the old wisdom of, you know, jiu-jitsu, right? Position before submission. And I think that there is deep truth to it. Like, I think honestly that is what we should be focusing on. And yeah, I mean, it's what I'm currently focusing on. I'm very much focused on a positionally oriented game. Make no mistake, guys, I want to submit people. I have a very high submission rate, right? I think I am one of the competitive grapplers with the highest submission rates out there, right? I have like over 150, I think, 150 submission wins, like something like that, right? I have a fuckload of submission wins. But I also think it's super important that I focus on my positional game more. I focus on scoring points. I focus on working towards an understanding of the tactics of the points format. And a lot of that comes down. What I'd recommend as much as possible, especially in no-gi, is trying to connect submissions with positional advancement, okay, with point scoring, right? So for instance, like, I think one of the best ways to get on top in no-gi is to go for heel hooks from the bottom, right? Ryan Hall did this recently in his last UFC fight. He went for a heel hook like a bunch of times. The guy defended. I'm sure Ryan probably could have persisted and even maybe finished it, but he knew that, well, maybe I won't finish it, that I can just get on top of him instead, right? Which is a win in that situation for him, right? You went from the bottom position to the top position. That's a win. So by all means, do not abandon leg locks or submissions. I'm 100% not. I would never, ever argue that. I think that's really, really stupid. But you want to see, okay, how can I connect these attacks with positional advancement? And funnily enough, I think that if you follow that advice, you will avoid the kind of like, I think one of the old problems of guys who overemphasize position is that they just weren't dangerous, right? Like, if I go against a guy and I know that he's got really, really good positional grappling, but his submission-based game isn't that good, I'm honestly not going to be that nervous. Like, it might not be a fun match. It's probably going to be a really tough match, but it's not like a nerve-wracking one, because I know, like, all right, well, maybe I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes to work. He might pass my guard, might pin me, might take my back, but he's likely not going to submit me, and so I have a lot of time where I can try to submit him, right? So you want to connect these two different, threats: the threat of a submission, right, which will end the match, and the threat of, scoring points, that's making sure every moment spent is building towards the win, right? You combine these two things, that's the best overall strategy for like long-term competitive success. So I just want to leave you guys with one last piece of advice, to someone to think about, that it's like a more practical piece of advice connected with all the theory that I just talked about. Try as much as possible when you get on top to stay on top. I see this all the time with young no-gi guys. They get on top, and right away they're falling back for leg locks. Stop fucking doing that. Once you get on top, fight to pass their guard, fight to take their back. That's what you should be working towards doing. If they are really giving you the heel hook, okay, of course you can take it. But I think for a while, you really want to avoid that temptation, because you're gonna take it more than you should. You know what I mean? It's like the dark side. It's seductive. It leads to short-term victory, but in the long term, you're maiming your understanding of the overall top position game, which it centers around largely attacking the upper body, which means guard passing and attacking the back. Occasionally, of course, falling back for leg locks will feature as a part of that, but it's not the main part.